She was 8 months pregnant, standing alone on the shoulder of a highway with a broken-down car and a man who was already on his way. She had 340. No signal, no plan. And then she heard them. The sound came from the west, like a storm she couldn't see. Low, building, massive, and when she turned, there were 115 of them. Leather cuts, steel engines, a patch on their backs that made most people lock their doors. She had two choices: get back in the car or raise her hand. She raised her hand. What happened next on Interstate 40 that August afternoon would change everything she thought she knew about strangers. The August heat in Tennessee pressed down like a hand on the back of her neck. Savannah Merritt gripped the steering wheel of her 09 Civic, the leather cracked and warm under her fingers, and watched the mile markers blur past on Interstate 40, heading east out of Nashville. The dashboard clock read 2:17 in the afternoon. She hadn't slept in 31 hours. In the back seat, stuffed into a garbage bag she'd grabbed from under the kitchen sink, were 3 changes of clothes, a bottle of prenatal vitamins, a worn paperback she'd been meaning to finish for 6 months, and $340 in cash. Every bill she had managed to hide in the lining of her winter coat over the past 4 months. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her left hand dropped from the wheel and rested on the curve of her belly. 8 months. The baby moved, a slow, rolling push against her palm, and she exhaled. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." She didn't entirely believe it yet, but she was practicing. The plan, insofar as she had one, was simple. Get to Knoxville, find the shelter on Cedar Street that a woman at the pharmacy had slipped her a card for 3 weeks ago, and figure out the rest from there. Savannah hadn't told anyone she was leaving. Not her mother in Cookville, who would have called Derek inside of an hour. Not her friend Melissa from the nail salon, who meant well but couldn't keep a secret past sundown. No one. The leaving had to be clean, or it wouldn't happen at all. She'd picked her moment carefully. Derek had left that morning for a job site in Murfreesboro, swearing he'd be back by 6. That gave her a window. She'd moved quietly through the house they'd shared for 2 years, taking only what was unambiguously hers, leaving behind the furniture, the dishes, the framed photo of the two of them at the Smoky Mountains that used to mean something. She'd locked the front door behind her and walked to the car without looking back. That had been the easy part. Now, pushing toward the 80-mile mark east of Nashville, the easy part was already a memory. The Civic had begun making a sound somewhere outside of Lebanon, a low, rhythmic knocking from the front left wheel that had no business getting louder, but was doing exactly that. Savannah had turned down the radio and listened, the way you listen to something you're hoping you misheard. She hadn't misheard it. By the time she passed the exit for Cookville, the knock had graduated to a grinding shudder that vibrated up through the floor, into the soles of her shoes. She pulled to the shoulder near mile marker 287, the gravel crunching under the tires, and killed the engine. The silence of the Tennessee countryside filled the car immediately. Trees pressed close on both sides of the interstate, their late summer leaves thick and dusty green in the afternoon heat. A hawk turned lazy circles somewhere above the tree line. There was no one else on the shoulder. There was very little traffic at all. Savannah sat for a moment with her hands in her lap, breathing. She was not a woman who cried easily. She had learned that crying in front of Derek produced outcomes that were worse than not crying, and so she had quietly trained the instinct out of herself over the course of 2 years. But sitting on the shoulder of Interstate 40, 8 months pregnant, with $340 in cash and a car that wouldn't move, and a man who was going to come home to an empty house in approximately 3.5 hours, she felt the tears arrive without asking permission. She let them come for 30 seconds. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand and reached for her phone. No signal. She held the phone up, moved it toward the window, toward the windshield. One bar appeared, trembled, and vanished. She tried dialing anyway. The The shelter, then 911, then a number she still knew by heart and would not call unless she had no other choice. Nothing went through. She got out of the car. The heat hit her full in the face, and she steadied herself against the doorframe for a moment, one hand on her belly, waiting for the slight dizziness to pass. The gravel of the shoulder was loose and uneven under her shoes. She walked around to the front of the car and crouched, slowly and carefully, to look at the left front wheel. She was not a mechanic. She didn't know what she was looking at specifically, but she could see that something was wrong. A dark smear of grease spreading from the wheel hub, and a faint smell of something hot and metallic rising from the area around the brake. She stood back up and shielded her eyes against the sun. That was when she heard them. The sound came from the west, a low, building rumble that she felt in her sternum before she could fully process it with her ears. It grew steadily, the way a storm grows, and within 30 seconds she could see them, motorcycles, dozens of them, a procession that stretched back along the highway farther than she could reasonably count, riding 2 by 2 in a formation that had the orderly weight of something deliberate and organized. Their engines filled the afternoon air completely. At the front of the column, on a matte black motorcycle that matched the leather cut on his back, rode a man who looked like he had been assembled by someone with very specific intentions. He was broad across the shoulders, grey-haired at the temples, with forearms that told their own story. On the back of his jacket, beneath the winged skull that Savannah recognized even from a distance, were 2 words in red and white: Hell's Angels. She stood on the shoulder of Interstate 40 and watched them come. Her first instinct, the instinct that had been carefully installed in her over a lifetime of being told what kind of men to be afraid of, was to get back in the car. She ignored it. She raised her hand. Cole Hargrove had been riding highways for 31 years, and he had developed over that time a particular kind of highway awareness, a widened peripheral vision, a calibrated sensitivity to things out of place. It was not mystical. It was the product of miles and near misses, and the accumulated experience of watching the road teach hard lessons to people who weren't paying attention. He saw the woman on the shoulder from nearly a quarter-mile out. By the time he pulled level with her, he had already read the situation in broad strokes. Late model Civic with a tire or brake issue, single occupant now standing outside, visibly pregnant, visibly distressed. No other vehicles stopped or slowing. He eased his throttle back and pulled onto the shoulder in one smooth motion, the gravel crackling under his front wheel. Behind him, the column adjusted. He heard it more than saw it, the slight shift in the engine note of the bikes closest to him, the unspoken communication of men who had ridden together long enough that the group moved like a single organism when the lead changed speed. Cole killed his engine and swung off the bike in the unhurried way of a man who was not performing for an audience. He pulled off his helmet and set it on the seat. His eyes went to the woman, her face, then her posture, then her belly, in a rapid and practical assessment that had nothing theatrical about it. She was younger than he'd expected up close, 20-something, with dark circles under green eyes that were watchful in a way that told him more than she probably intended. She was standing very still, her right hand resting on the side of her stomach, and she was doing the specific thing people do when they're trying not to look scared, holding herself a little too upright, breathing a little too carefully. "Car trouble?" Cole said. "Front left wheel," she said. "Something's wrong with it. I'm not sure what exactly." She paused. "I'm Savannah." Cole. He glanced at the wheel, then back at her. "How far you going?" "Knoxville." "You got someone to call?" A hesitation so brief it might have been imagined. "I can't get a signal out here." Cole nodded. He'd noticed that himself. This particular stretch of 40 was a dead zone, had been for years. He turned and looked back at the column. Ray Dunbar had already pulled up behind him and was dismounting, his grey-streaked beard and battered cut marking him as clearly as a name tag to anyone who knew the club. "Ray," Cole said. Ray walked up and crouched by the front wheel without being asked. He ran 2 fingers along the edge of the hub, examined what came back, and stood up. "Wheel bearings shot," he said. "She's not making it to Knoxville on this." Savannah absorbed this information with the quiet steadiness of someone who had been absorbing bad news for long enough that it no longer surprised them. How long would it take to fix? "Not something you fix on a shoulder," Ray said, not unkindly. "Needs a shop." Cole looked east, then west, calculating. The nearest town with a decent garage was Cookeville, about 12 miles back. He knew the place, a 2-bay shop run by a man named Burl, who owed him something approximating a favor. "We can get you to a shop," Cole said, "and we can call ahead. Make sure they take you quick." "I can't go back toward Cookeville," Savannah said. She'd said it before she could decide whether or not to say it, and he watched her register that, the slight tension around her eyes that appeared immediately after the words came out. She didn't take it back. Cole was quiet for a moment. He had a policy, developed over decades of dealing with the full spectrum of human complications that tended to accumulate around a life like his, of not asking questions that weren't his business. But he was also a man who knew the difference between a situation that was what it looked like and a situation that was something else, and this was something else. "All right," he said. "There's a truck stop about 9 miles east. They've got a service bay, and there's a diner. You can sit in the AC while we sort the car." He paused. "You eaten today?" She looked at him. Something in her expression shifted, not breaking exactly, but something going slightly less rigid in it. "Not really." "Okay." Cole turned back to the column. By now, perhaps 20 of the nearest riders had pulled onto the shoulder or were idling on the highway's edge, watchful. The rest had slowed to a near stop on the road. 115 men waiting, engines rumbling low like something patient. Cole raised his hand and made a circular motion. "Keep moving east." He'd catch up. To Ray. "Find somebody with a truck or a trailer hitch who can tow this." Ray was already walking back toward the column, fishing his phone from his cut. Cole turned back to Savannah. "Can you ride?" he asked, nodding toward his bike. She looked at the motorcycle, then at him. "I've never been on one." "It's 9 miles, he said. "I'll take it slow. You hold the back grip, not me, and you tell me if you need to stop." She was quiet for 3 or 4 seconds. He let her think. "Okay," she said. Getting her onto the back of the bike took some maneuvering, and Cole was patient about it in the way that people are patient when patience is genuinely required rather than performed. He adjusted the position of his seating to give her room. When she was settled, she put both hands on the rear passenger grip, and he felt the slight tension of her hold through the frame. "Ready?" he said. "Ready," she said. He started the engine, eased off the shoulder, and pulled back onto Interstate 40 heading east. In the rearview mirror, he could see Ray already coordinating. A rider with a pickup truck was swinging the vehicle around on the shoulder, preparing to hook up a tow. Efficient. Ray had been doing this kind of thing for 23 years. The column fell in around them as they rejoined the highway. Bikes moving up alongside and behind with the easy, practiced fluidity of water finding its level. Savannah said nothing. He could feel that she was holding herself carefully, managing the novelty of the motion, and he kept his speed deliberate and smooth, avoiding any sharp inputs. 9 miles. It occurred to Cole, as the tree line slid past on both sides and the afternoon sun dropped toward the western horizon behind them, that he didn't yet know what she was running from. But he'd known enough people running to recognize the look, and he knew with a particular practical certainty that whatever it was still behind her, and the bearing on her front left wheel was the least of her problems. The truck stop was called Eagle Rest, and it existed in that particular category of American roadside institution that is not beautiful but is deeply, specifically real. A wide gravel lot, 2 fuel canopies, a service bay with corrugated metal siding, and attached to the south end of the building. A diner called simply The Eat, with a neon sign in the window that hummed blue and orange in the late afternoon light. Savannah sat in a booth by the window with a glass of sweet tea and a menu she wasn't reading. Through the grease-fogged glass, she watched the parking lot fill with motorcycles. They came in steadily, engines dropping to idle one by one, men dismounting and moving with the unhurried confidence of people who owned whatever ground they were standing on without needing to make a statement about it. Some leaned against their bikes, some talked in small clusters. A few wandered toward the diner, filling the booths around her with a gradual, unannounced occupation that should have been frightening and somehow was not. She pressed her palm against her belly. The baby was awake, moving in slow, rolling circuits. "He kicking?" said a voice. Savannah looked up. A woman in a blue diner apron, name tag reading Carol, was standing at the end of the booth with a coffee pot she hadn't asked for. Carol was somewhere in her 50s, with the specific expression of someone who had seen quite a lot and had strong opinions about most of it. "We think it's a he," Savannah said. "And yeah, pretty much constantly." Carol set the coffee pot down and slid into the opposite seat with the familiarity of someone who worked 14-hour days and sat down wherever she could. "You with those guys?" "Sort of," Savannah said. "My car broke down." Carol looked out at the lot. "Cole Hargrove bring you in?" Savannah blinked. "You know him." "Honey, everybody in 3 counties knows Cole Hargrove." Carol picked up the coffee pot again and filled a cup she'd produced from her apron pocket. "He was here 2 years ago when my ex decided to park in the lot and wait for me after close. Cole and about 8 of those men sat in this diner until 2 in the morning, until my ex decided he had somewhere else to be." She paused. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. Savannah looked back out at the lot. Cole was near the service bay, talking to a mechanic she didn't know, one hand in his back pocket, unhurried. "I didn't ask him to help me either," she said quietly. "No," Carol said. "You didn't have to." It was around that time that Savannah's phone found a signal. It found 4 bars, suddenly and completely, the way signals sometimes return on highways, all at once, like a door opening. And in the next 15 seconds, her phone produced 7 text messages in rapid succession, each arriving with a vibration that she felt in her chest before she read any of them. All from Derek. She read the first one. Then she turned the phone face down on the table. Carol, who had watched her face through this sequence, said nothing. She refilled the sweet tea without being asked and left the table. Savannah sat for a moment with her hands flat on the table, steadying herself. Derek's job site in Murfreesboro had apparently ended early. The timestamps on the messages began at 4:42 p.m., which meant he'd been home for just over an hour. The first message was controlled. The second was less so. By the 7th, the control was entirely gone, and what was left in its place was the version of Derek that Savannah had learned over 2 years to navigate around with the careful attention of someone picking a path through broken glass. She knew the sequence. She had memorized it the way you memorize something you need to survive. What she hadn't accounted for was that Derek knew her car. He knew the plates, and he knew that Knoxville was the only place she had ever mentioned wanting to go. She pulled up her Maps app. Interstate 40 east from Nashville to Knoxville. One road. No meaningful alternatives. If Derek got in his truck now, and she had no reason to believe he hadn't already, he would be driving the same road she was sitting 30 feet from. The math of it settled into her like cold water. She turned her phone back over and called 911. The operator answered on the second ring, and Savannah gave her name, her location, and a compact, factual account of the situation. The texts, the history, the restraining order she had applied for 4 months ago and been told would take time, the direction she believed Derek was traveling. She had rehearsed this call in her head more times than she could count. When it came out of her mouth, it sounded very calm. She was almost surprised. The operator told her a unit would be dispatched and gave her an estimated arrival time of 22 minutes. 22 minutes. Savannah thanked her, ended the call, and sat with it. She was so absorbed in the calculations, she didn't notice Cole until he was standing at the edge of the table. He had a plate in each hand, a club sandwich and a bowl of soup, which he set down in front of her without ceremony. "Wheel bearing's going to take about 40 minutes, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Mechanic's good, and Ray's making sure he stays focused." Savannah looked at the food, then at him. "I called 911, she said. A beat. Cole picked up his coffee, which Carol had apparently already delivered, and said, "Okay. My ex knows what road I'm on," she said. "He might be on his way." Cole set the coffee down. Something shifted in his expression. Not alarm, exactly. Something more like attention sharpening to a point. "How long ago did he find out you were gone?" "About an hour." He nodded slowly. "The officer's coming here." 22 minutes. Cole looked out at the lot. Then he pulled his phone from his cut and typed something. Outside, within 30 seconds, she saw the clusters of men in the lot shift. Not dramatically, not with any visible urgency, but with the small, deliberate adjustments of people repositioning themselves relative to something. The lot, which had been populated by men standing in roughly random configurations, began to reorganize itself almost imperceptibly. The entrance from the westbound on-ramp became less empty. "Eat," Cole said to Savannah. She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not who you expected," she said. "No," he agreed, "and neither am I." He nodded at the sandwich. "Eat. You've got a kid who needs the calories and you've got 22 minutes. She picked up the sandwich. Outside, 114 men and one mechanic had quietly arranged themselves around a truck stop on Interstate 40, and the western entrance to the lot had approximately the welcoming quality of a closed door. Derek Voss arrived at Eagle Rest at 6:18 p.m. in a black F-250 that he drove the way he drove everything, like the road was his and the rest of the world was in his way. He'd made good time from Nashville, which meant he'd been doing 85 or better on the interstate, which meant the anger had not slowed him down. It rarely did. Savannah had always noticed that about him. The way fury seemed to clarify him rather than cloud him, made him more focused rather than less. It was one of the things that had taken her a long time to understand was dangerous. He pulled into the Eagle Rest lot and got his first look at it and stopped. He had been expecting a truck stop. He had not been expecting a truck stop full of motorcycles. He sat in the idling F-250 for a moment, his eyes moving across the lot with the quick, calculating assessment of a man whose instincts were well developed even when his judgment was poor. There were motorcycles everywhere, filling the lot from the fuel canopies to the far end of the parking area, arranged in the loose but definite rows of a group that had parked together. And there were men beside them, many men, wearing leather cuts with a winged skull on the back. Derek recognized the patch. He wasn't a stupid man. He pulled forward anyway. He made it approximately 40 feet into the lot before the path forward became impractical. Not because anyone moved to block him. No one made an aggressive gesture. No one stepped in front of the truck. It was subtler than that. The distribution of motorcycles and men in the lot was simply such that continuing forward at any useful speed was no longer an option. He would have to inch or stop. He stopped. A man walked up to the driver's side window. Grey-streaked beard, steady eyes, the specific unhurried calm of someone who had been in many rooms and was comfortable in all of them. He didn't lean on the truck. He didn't put his hands on anything. He just stood there with his arms at his sides in the way that very large men can occupy space without advertising it. "Help you?" Ray Dunbar said. Derek's window was already down. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "A woman, pregnant, brunette, driving a grey Civic." "Lot of people through here," Ray said. "This would have been in the last hour or two," Derek said. He was using his reasonable voice, The one Savannah knew well, the one that sounded measured and calm and gave no indication of the 7 messages that had preceded it. Ray said. He didn't move. Look, Derek said, and let a smile into it. The social smile, the one he deployed in situations where being liked was useful. She's my girlfriend. She's 8 months pregnant. I'm worried about her. She wasn't answering her phone, and I just want to make sure she's okay. Ray looked at him for a moment with an expression of absolute, undisguised patience. I understand, he said. So if you could just let me... I understand, Ray said again. But this is a private lot right now. Club gathering. We'll be cleared out shortly. He paused. There's a rest area about 4 miles east. Good place to make phone calls. Derek stared at him. Behind Ray, the lot was very still. The men in it were not looking at Derek directly. They were engaged in their own conversations, their own activities, the specific, unremarkable business of a large group of people occupying a space. But they were present. All of them. In a way that was impossible to miss. Derek's jaw tightened. I have every right to be in this lot. Technically, Ray said. His tone did not change. But you're welcome to call the sheriff if you think there's been an error. He said it evenly, without emphasis, and it landed with the particular weight of a sentence that means more than it says. Derek looked at Ray. Ray looked at Derek with the patient attention of a man who had nowhere to be and no concerns about the outcome. Inside the diner, Savannah was watching through the window. She had recognized the F-250 the moment it pulled in. She had felt the recognition in her throat before she consciously processed it. Beside her, Cole sat forward slightly, a small adjustment in posture, a shifting of weight, nothing dramatic. That him? Cole said quietly. Yes, she said. Cole didn't move from the table. He picked up his coffee. He can see the diner from there, Savannah said. He can, Cole agreed. He might be able to see me. He might. Cole set the coffee down and looked at her. But he's not coming in. You don't know. I know, Ray, Cole said simply. He's not coming in. Outside, the conversation between Ray and Derek appeared to have reached some kind of equilibrium. Derek's window went up. For 30 seconds, nothing moved. Then the F-250 reversed slowly, pulled a wide turn, and exited the lot the way it had come. It did not go east toward the rest area. It pulled to the shoulder of the access road just outside the lot entrance and stopped there, engine running, visible through the west-facing windows of the diner. The room around Savannah went quiet in a specific way, not silent. There was still conversation, the clatter of dishes, Carol moving between tables, but something had shifted in the ambient awareness of the men in the diner. Several heads had turned almost imperceptibly toward the western windows. Cole put down his coffee and stood up. I'll be right back, he said. He walked out of the diner and into the lot, and Savannah watched him cover the distance to the entrance in the unhurried way he did everything. He stopped at the edge of the lot. The F-250 was 30 feet away on the access road. She could not see his face from where she sat. Whatever Cole said to Derek, if he said anything, she couldn't know. She saw the exchange from a distance. Cole at the lot's edge, the F-250 idling on the road, and between them an interval of stillness that lasted perhaps 45 seconds. Then the F-250 moved. It pulled forward onto the access road heading east toward the interstate on-ramp and did not stop. Savannah watched its taillights until they disappeared into the curve of the road. She was still watching the window when she heard the sound of a different engine in the lot, a sedan engine, and saw the black and white of a Putnam County Sheriff's vehicle pull in from the east entrance. It was 6:31 p.m., 13 minutes ahead of the estimated arrival time. Sheriff Tom Elwick stepped out of the vehicle, hitching his belt with the practiced gesture of a man who'd been doing it for 2 decades, and looked across the lot with an expression that was somewhere between professional and genuinely surprised. He had not been expecting the motorcycles either. Cole walked back into the diner and sat down across from Savannah. "Sheriff's here," he said. "I saw." She looked at him. "What did you say to Derek?" Cole picked up his coffee. "Nothing that needs repeating," he said. Sheriff Tom Elwick took Savannah's statement in the corner booth farthest from the door, with a notepad and a recorder, and the methodical care of a man who had learned, somewhere along the way, to take these situations seriously. He was not an unkind man. He asked clear questions and listened to the answers without interrupting. And when she got to the part about the texts, he asked to see them and looked at each one with the focused attention of someone building a case rather than processing a complaint. "He's likely still on this road somewhere east of here," Savannah said, waiting for me to come out. "We'll handle that," Elwick said. He made a note. "You have a destination in Knoxville?" "A shelter on Cedar Street. I have the address." He nodded. "I know the place. Good people." He looked up from his notepad. "This the first time he's escalated to—" "No," she said. "It's not the first time. She stopped. Found the honest version of it. "I didn't have anywhere to go until recently. And then I waited too long to go." Elwick wrote something, didn't editorialize. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do." He laid it out practically. He would run Derek's plates, document the texts as evidence of harassment and implied threat, and put out a watch on the vehicle in Putnam and adjacent counties. A colleague in Knox County would be alerted to the shelter's address. An escort, if she wanted one, could be arranged to the county line. "Can they guarantee I get to Knoxville?" she asked. "I can get you to the county line," Elwick said. "After that, it's Knox County's jurisdiction, but I'll be on the phone with them before we get there." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was more than she'd had that morning. "Okay," she said. After the sheriff moved away to make calls, Cole came back to the table. The diner had thinned out somewhat. Riders had begun departing in smaller groups, the column gradually reconstituting itself on the interstate, the lot outside going from packed to half full as the afternoon gave way to early evening. "Car's done," Cole said. "Ray paid for it." Savannah looked up. "I can pay—" "Ray paid for it," Cole repeated, with the air of someone closing a topic. "It's not a discussion." She looked at him for a moment. "Why?" she said. "Why did you do all of this?" It was the question she'd been carrying since the shoulder of Interstate 40, and she asked it without accusation, genuinely, the way you ask something you actually need to understand. Cole was quiet for a moment, in the way of a man who is taking a question seriously rather than just loading an answer. "I've got a daughter," he said finally. "She's 32 now, married, 2 kids, lives in Chattanooga. But when she was 24, she was in a situation that wasn't entirely different from yours." He paused. "I wasn't there when it was happening. I didn't know about it until it was mostly over. And I spent a long time after that thinking about what might have happened if someone had just stopped." Savannah said nothing. "We're not good men, by most accounts," Cole said. There was no self-pity in it. It was the tone of someone stating a fact about the weather. The things people think when they see that patch are mostly earned somewhere along the line, even if not by these particular men today. We know what the world thinks we are. He picked up his coffee, which was by now cold. But there's a difference between what the world decides you are and what you choose to be on a given afternoon. It sat in the air between them, unhurried. "Thank you," Savannah said. The words felt inadequate for what they were carrying, but they were the ones she had. Cole nodded once. "Your car's in the east lot. Ray put the receipt in the glove box if you want it for records." He stood, and she stood with him, and for a moment she didn't know exactly what to do with the enormity of the afternoon, the weight of it, the strangeness of it, the fact that she was standing in a truck-stop diner on Interstate 40, having been carried here, in every meaningful sense, by 115 men she would never have approached on any other day of her life. She thought about what Carol had said. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Cole stopped. "Do you do this a lot?" He seemed to consider the question with genuine care. We do what's in front of us, he said. That's all it ever is. Outside, the last of the bikes were pulling out of the lot. The sky had shifted from afternoon gold to the early amber of evening, and the shadows of the trees along the interstate had lengthened to cover most of the frontage road. It was beautiful in the straightforward, accidental way that highway country is beautiful when you stop long enough to look at it. Nurse Beth Caldwell appeared at Savannah's elbow with a blood pressure cuff and the calm authority of someone who had been waiting for the right moment. She'd arrived 20 minutes earlier at Carol's call, a practical woman from the Cookville clinic who made house calls in her off hours and kept a medical bag in her car as a matter of professional habit. "Before you go anywhere," Beth said, in a tone that did not leave much room for negotiation, "I want to check your pressure and make sure this little one is settled." Savannah sat back down. Her blood pressure was slightly elevated, understandable, Beth said, with clinical equanimity given the circumstances, but within an acceptable range. The baby's movement was active and regular. Beth handed her a business card and told her to call from the shelter in Knoxville when she arrived, just to confirm. "Will you?" Beth said. "Yes," Savannah said. "I will." Sheriff Elwick's voice came from near the door. "Ms. Merritt, we're ready when you are." She gathered her bag. Carol was behind the counter, and she raised her hand, and Savannah raised hers back, and that was enough. That small exchange between two women who understood the specific geography of the afternoon without needing to map it. The parking lot at dusk was quiet and half empty. Her Civic was in the east lot, keys in the ignition, the steering wheel solid and real under her hands when she sat down. She started the engine. It ran clean and smooth, the wheel bearing silent, the grinding tremor of the afternoon completely gone. Through the windshield, she could see Sheriff Elwick's cruiser waiting at the lot exit. Lights off, patient. She put the car in drive. The road east was wide and clear, the interstate running straight between the Tennessee hills with the particular ease of a road that has accepted you. Her phone showed 4 bars. The shelter on Cedar Street in Knoxville was 63 miles away. She could be there before 8. She rested her hand on her belly for a moment, feeling the slow, rolling movement of her son. "Okay," she said quietly, to him, to herself, to the road ahead. "Okay, we're going." She pulled out of Eagle Rest behind the sheriff's cruiser and headed east on Interstate 40, the last of the day's light settling gold across the pavement in front of her, the Tennessee hills on either side tall and green and steady. Behind her, the truck stop sign hummed blue and orange in the growing dark. She didn't look back.